They say that places of worship are meant to be sanctuaries where spirits find peace and communities come together. But have you ever wondered what happens when the person everyone respects has a sinister side lurking beneath the surface? What if someone you trust, who comforts you with kind words, holds a hidden darkness that nobody dares to suspect? Imagine a single mother working hard, hoping for a tranquil life in what should be a peaceful church environment. Envision a respected pastor, admired by many, suddenly revealing a menacing face only one person sees. Then picture a shocking act of violence that sends the entire community reeling, exposing secrets that challenge everyone's assumptions of trust, faith, and safety. Would you believe that the individual the town cherished and praised might be more frightening than anyone realized? And how would you respond if you were cornered, alone, with no escape in sight? This story may make you question your own sense of security in the most unlikely of places. If you want to learn the unsettling truth behind an incident that shattered the image of a beloved pastor, stay with us. You may find yourself asking questions about power, silence, and the frailty of reputation. Thank you for joining us as we unveil the details of this shocking true crime case. We value your time and curiosity. If you crave real-life mysteries, chilling revelations, and thorough investigations that dive deep into the darkest corners of human nature, please subscribe to True Crime Atlas. Your support allows us to continue telling stories that challenge our perceptions of right and wrong, and it ensures you never miss an update on cases that captivate and unnerve us all. Our story takes place in a small rural community in Texas, a region defined by winding roads, sprawling ranches, and modest neighborhoods. The sun often beats down hard, and the slow pace of life allows families to form tight bonds. Neighbors know each other's names. Local diners serve home-style meals, and weekend gatherings revolve around schools, sports, or, most notably, the local church. This is the sort of place where people greet each other on the street and wave at passing cars. It is also a place where reputation carries a lot of weight. In the heart of this community stands a white steepled church that everyone recognizes. On Sundays, the bells ring to call everyone to worship. Families arrive early, children in neat Sunday clothes, and adults share smiles and the latest news about upcoming events. A close-knit administrative team handles the day-to-day operations of the church, which include printing bulletins, updating financial records, and scheduling services. No one usually questions who keeps everything running smoothly behind the scenes. They simply appreciate that the doors are always open and the events are well organized. Rachel Martinez started working in this administrative team about 3 years ago. She was 34 at the time, raising 2 energetic boys, Jacob 9 and Eric 6, on her own. She had escaped a toxic marriage, marked by emotional abuse, finally finding the courage to leave after enduring years of turmoil. When she settled in this rural community, she hoped the peaceful environment would allow her to rebuild her life from scratch. Money was tight, but she managed to rent a modest apartment. The job opening at the church seemed like a godsend. Steady hours, a calm setting, and friendly people. In the first few months, Rachel embraced her duties with enthusiasm. She answered phones, handled filing, and assisted with everything from Sunday school schedules to community outreach programs. The pastor, David Walker, welcomed her warmly. He was a man in his late 40s, known for his lively sermons and seemingly kind heart. Whenever anyone in the area needed assistance, whether it was financial help, emotional support, or prayers, he was the first to volunteer. Members of the congregation often described him as a shepherd, with a booming voice that commanded attention at the pulpit. He had a way of telling stories that brought tears to many eyes, leaving listeners feeling inspired. At first, Rachel viewed Pastor Walker as a source of hope. He praised her strong work ethic and her organizational skills. He invited her to church dinners, introduced her to respected community members, and spoke openly about how valuable she was to the church. To Rachel, whose life had been difficult, this acceptance felt like a comforting embrace. She had needed a sense of belonging, and finally, it seemed she might have found it. But as the months went by, slight details about his behavior unsettled her. His comments about her appearance often seemed more personal than supportive. Compliments escalated from, "You look radiant today," to whispered observations like, "I love how that blouse flatters your figure." At first, she brushed it off. He was affectionate and outgoing with many people. She assumed he was merely personable, even if his praises occasionally felt too close for comfort. Yet, Rachel also began noticing the intensity in his eyes when he spoke to her. His admiration went beyond typical conversation, and the physical distance between them often felt smaller than she preferred. She recalled her past and wondered if her old anxieties might be clouding her perspective. Perhaps she was being overly cautious. She wanted to believe in the goodness of this new environment. Over time, however, Pastor Walker's attention became more intrusive. One evening, while she was finishing up a spreadsheet for a church fundraiser, he leaned over her chair, placing one hand on the back of it. His voice dropped to a low murmur as he praised her dedication. She felt the hair on her arms stand on end. He massaged her shoulder casually, something that felt wildly inappropriate to her. Alarmed, she packed her things and left as soon as possible. Later, it escalated to late-night phone calls. Rachel would settle in after putting her kids to bed, only to see the pastor's name flash on her phone. He would ask if she was lonely or needed someone to talk to. She tried to keep the conversation short, hoping he would interpret her one-word responses as disinterest. When she hinted that the calls made her uncomfortable, he would laugh it off as harmless concern. While she told herself it might be an overreaction, a gnawing sense of dread grew each time the phone rang. She tried confiding in a friend, explaining that the pastor's attention felt too personal, too directed. The friend suggested speaking to church elders or at least another trusted member. Rachel hesitated. This pastor was beloved by the community, and she worried that accusations might invite disbelief or anger. Instead, she became more cautious. She avoided being alone with him and made sure to leave the church before dark. Even so, something seemed inevitable about his persistence. He began showing up at her apartment complex unannounced, sometimes with groceries or toys for her children. At first glance, these gestures might look charitable, but to Rachel, they were more reminders that he was watching her life closely. He asked questions about where she spent her weekends, whether she was dating anyone, and how her ex-husband treated her. She felt her private life shrinking under his scrutiny. No one else appeared to notice the unease. The congregation adored Pastor Walker, and her co-workers seemed to think his generosity toward Rachel was another example of his compassion. Slowly, she felt isolated, questioning her own judgment, scared that if she raised alarms, the community would label her ungrateful or hysterical. She had endured emotional manipulation before, and this felt like a terrifying echo of past abuse. Rachel's role at the church was integral. She handled administrative tasks for large events like holiday festivals and charitable fundraisers. Extended hours were a regular part of the job. Sometimes she stayed to finalize reports or schedule the next event. Long after the rest of the staff had gone home, these quiet evenings felt safe initially, a chance to concentrate. But soon, they became moments of dread, especially when she heard footsteps in the hallway. Pastor Walker started appearing during these late shifts more often. He would claim to be checking on her progress. She tried to mask her discomfort by chatting politely, but inside, Her heart raced. He stood too close, hovered as she typed, and touched her shoulder in fleeting but unwelcome ways. She had the urge to scream, but she pushed the feeling down, reminding herself that she needed this job. One Thursday, she was lost in her spreadsheet work, absorbed in finalizing volunteer schedules. The fluorescent office lights hummed overhead. Suddenly, she sensed a presence behind her. She turned to see him standing there with that familiar smile. He complimented her for staying late and offered to walk her to her car. Fear gnawed at the pit of her stomach, but she didn't feel she could refuse. Outside, as they walked across the dimly lit parking lot, he tried to initiate a conversation about her personal life. She gave short answers, hoping that would end the discussion, and managed to drive away in haste. The next afternoon, she heard a knock on her apartment door. Opening it cautiously, she found Pastor Walker holding a bag of groceries. His explanation was simple. He knew she had children and wanted to help. She accepted the bag but felt an unsettling sense that he was encroaching on her personal boundaries again. His eyes wandered around her small living room, observing the modest furniture, the children's toys scattered around. Rachel stood there, heart pounding, praying that he would leave quickly. After a few lingering moments, he departed, but not without an affectionate pat on her arm, as if to assert some form of ownership. She tried to gather the courage to speak out, but it seemed nobody would believe her. His reputation was sterling. People admired him for his charity. She tried warning a longtime church volunteer, an older woman named Linda, who noticed Rachel's distress. Linda listened quietly, her brow furrowed, and promised to keep an eye on things. Yet Linda, too, was only one voice in a crowd that saw a kind-hearted pastor. Fear shadowed Rachel's every move. She double-checked her locks at night. She made sure her children stayed at a friend's place on nights she had to work late. But she couldn't escape the sickening awareness that the pastor's next intrusion was always around the corner. Worst of all, she felt powerless. She questioned whether her own past experiences made her hypersensitive. Perhaps her judgment was off, or maybe she was reading too much into simple acts of kindness. But her instincts told her something was undeniably wrong. On Friday, March 15th, Rachel arranged for her boys to stay overnight with their babysitter. She was tasked with finalizing details for a major church event. From creating schedules to confirming vendor deliveries, staying late was not unusual, although it had started to feel unbearable. By early evening, the rest of the staff had gone home. The building silent, except for the hum of the air conditioning and the tap of her keyboard. Hoping to finish quickly, Rachel focused on her computer screen, telling herself that if she worked efficiently, she could be home before midnight. The office lights created a sharp contrast against the dark corridors outside. The occasional creak from the walls made her jump, her nerves frayed to a breaking point. Shortly after 8 o'clock, the office door squeaked open. Her heart lurched in her chest. She saw Pastor Walker step inside, wearing a concerned expression. He asked why she was still there alone and said he needed to check on the final details. Rachel tried to mask her panic, offering him a brief summary of her progress. She hoped he would leave, but instead, he settled near her desk. He started talking about how dedicated she was, how much the church valued her. His voice was smooth, but his posture was intimidating. He inched closer, placing a hand on her shoulder. She tensed up, swallowing hard. She told him she was almost done and needed to go home soon because of her babysitter. He didn't move away. Instead, his tone changed. He locked the door, turning to face her. The look in his eyes made every alarm in Rachel's mind go off. She stood up and backed away, her legs shaking. He remarked that he had done so much for her, implying she owed him something. She began to feel suffocated. She tried to move around him, but he intercepted her path. Her instincts yelled at her to run, but fear and confusion held her in place. She tried to reason with him, her voice quivering. He seized her wrist, then attempted to kiss her neck. His hand pressed against her back, pulling her closer. Her thoughts became jumbled with terror. She reached for something, anything, on the desk, and felt the cool handle of a letter opener. She had used that letter opener countless times for mundane tasks, never imagining it could become a weapon. In a panicked flurry, she stabbed him once in the chest. The action was not planned. It was pure reflex, a desperate effort to get him off her. The moment she felt the blade make contact, her world seemed to freeze. Pastor Walker's expression shifted from lustful aggression to shocked disbelief. He stumbled, releasing her. Blood bloomed on his shirt. Rachel's breath caught in her throat as she scrambled to call 911. She stayed by his side, pressing her hand against the wound, sobbing and apologizing, terror plain in her voice. The operator instructed her to remain calm and keep him talking. She tried, but he was slipping out of consciousness. When the police and paramedics arrived, Rachel stood near the doorway, hands trembling, clothes stained with blood. Paramedics rushed to help Pastor Walker, who lay on the floor gasping for air. Officers drew their weapons, shouting for Rachel to get down. Adrenaline numbed her senses, and she could barely speak. She repeated that she had been attacked and acted in self-defense, but the scene was chaotic. Nobody knew the full story yet. Pastor Walker was transported to a hospital. Gravely injured but still alive, Rachel was taken into custody. The ride to the station felt surreal. She imagined her children at the babysitter's house, blissfully unaware of how drastically their lives were about to change. She felt guilt, confusion, and a crushing fear that no one would believe her side of the story. After all, she had stabbed a revered community figure. At the station, detectives booked her, took her fingerprints, and led her to an interrogation room. The fluorescent lights gave her a headache. Detective Caldwell, a man with a patient demeanor, asked her to recount the events of the night. She described every detail: the harassment, the unwanted visits, the unwanted advances. Tears streamed down her face as she repeated that she had no choice. He nodded, taking notes, but offered no indication of what he believed. "We will look into these claims," he stated calmly. "Right now, we have a seriously wounded pastor, and you with a bloody letter opener." The bluntness of his words made her heart hammer. Would the community see her as the monster? Would they question her character, her motives? She was placed in a holding cell for the weekend. News of the incident leaked immediately. Gossip spread like wildfire. Early rumors insinuated that Rachel had gone into a violent rage and attacked Pastor Walker out of jealousy or bitterness. Others speculated that she had been mentally unstable since her divorce. Many refused to even consider that the pastor might have initiated the confrontation. By Sunday, the church was packed with members mourning the pastor's injuries. Prayers were offered for his swift recovery. Rachel's name was on every tongue, often with resentment. She was seen as the aggressor, a threat. Her children stayed with the babysitter, while Rachel's friends scrambled to figure out how to help. Some urged the public to wait for the facts, but most believed the pastor's version of events. Detectives interviewed the congregation. Almost everyone described Pastor Walker as compassionate and giving, someone incapable of wrongdoing. A handful of people admitted they found his manner too friendly at times, but no one wanted to accuse him outright. Linda quietly told the police that Rachel had expressed fear. However, Linda lacked concrete evidence, so her statements held limited weight. Once Rachel was arraigned, her bail was set unusually high. She had to rely on a few friends and supporters to gather enough resources. Even after she posted bail, the tension did not subside. Her apartment was surrounded by reporters and curious onlookers. Trying to run basic errands became an ordeal, and she felt compelled to keep her children hidden away from the vicious scrutiny. Meanwhile, Pastor Walker's condition was critical. Everyone seemed eager to demonstrate their support for him, which only intensified the hostility toward Rachel. She retained a public defender, who explained that they would plead self-defense. But the odds seemed stacked against her. Proving a revered pastor had been the aggressor looked nearly impossible, especially without any witnesses. Unknown to most, the church had recently upgraded its security system to a modern cloud-based system. An enthusiastic volunteer tech team had installed new cameras in hallways and offices. While the older equipment had been unreliable, the new system featured a cloud backup that automatically saved footage in real time. A young volunteer decided to check the cloud archives, unsure if the camera in Rachel's office had been active. To his amazement, he discovered 3 hours of video labeled Office Cam Test, which showed a clear angle of the main office on March 15th. When Detective Caldwell received a copy of this footage, he watched with growing shock. The video showed Pastor Walker arriving after hours. It revealed his aggressive approach, the moment he locked the door, and the way he cornered Rachel. Every disturbing second leading up to the stabbing was there. The detective replayed the scene multiple times, making notes. He saw how Pastor Walker grabbed Rachel's wrists and tried to force himself on her. It was impossible to interpret the encounter as anything but an assault. The camera even recorded the immediate aftermath, where Rachel called 911, sobbing, apologizing, and trying to help the wounded pastor. Detective Caldwell promptly shared the footage with the district attorney. Initially, the DA had been preparing an aggravated assault charge against Rachel. After viewing the footage, they halted everything. This evidence showed a clear case of self-defense. The conversation around Rachel's arrest changed drastically. The district attorney's office announced that it would drop the charges pending further investigation. In the wave of renewed scrutiny, authorities uncovered more alarming details from Pastor Walker's past. He had faced 2 separate accusations of sexual misconduct. Church elders had arranged quiet settlements, ensuring that documents were sealed and no formal charges materialized. The women involved in those earlier cases had been pressured into signing non-disclosure agreements. The church leadership had apparently decided protecting their pastor's image was more important than confronting the truth. None of this was common knowledge among the congregation. The revelation of past settlements sent shockwaves through the community. People began to question the leadership, asking how much they knew and when. The silence around these issues gave the impression that institutional interests had outweighed the well-being of potential victims. For Rachel, the revelations provided both relief and anger. She had felt alone in her ordeal. Learning that others had lodged complaints, only to be silenced by money and confidentiality, enraged her. If the church had been transparent, she might have been warned. She might have guarded herself better, or perhaps the leadership could have intervened sooner. When the news broke about the surveillance footage, the gossip shifted. Some still tried to cling to the belief that Pastor Walker was misunderstood, but many changed their opinions immediately. Online discussions erupted, condemning the hypocrisy of someone who preached morality yet seemed to prey on vulnerable individuals. Rachel's reputation began to recover in the public eye, but the emotional toll on her was irreparable. With the charges against Rachel dropped, she was legally exonerated. The district attorney made a formal statement, acknowledging the new evidence and apologizing for the initial rush to judgment. However, the damage to Rachel's life remained considerable. She had been publicly vilified for weeks, and her children had experienced name-calling and bullying at school. She felt as though the entire community's trust in her had been pulverized. Her public defender pointed out that she could sue the church. Their refusal to act on her earlier complaints, coupled with the newly uncovered settlements, made a strong case for institutional negligence. Rachel hesitated, exhausted by the stress. She was wary of reliving her trauma in a legal battle that could drag on for years. The main thing she wanted was peace and a safe place for her children. Meanwhile, Pastor Walker clung to life. He required extensive medical treatment but eventually stabilized. Rumors suggested he might be charged with assault once he was well enough, although the final outcome depended on the prosecutor's decisions. The church leaders tried to distance themselves from him. Several board members resigned under public pressure. Attendance dwindled, donations dried up, and the building that once symbolized unity became a source of painful controversy. Rachel felt uneasy every time she stepped outside her apartment. Although the police had cleared her, she still faced stares from people unsure how to react. Some offered apologies. Others kept their distance, uncomfortable with the fact that they had cast her as a villain without knowing the facts. She struggled to sleep at night, plagued by nightmares and flashbacks. Counseling provided some relief, but she remained on edge, as if waiting for another crisis to erupt. The district attorney's office formally dismissed the case against Rachel Martinez, stating clearly that she had acted in self-defense based on irrefutable video footage. They admitted that without that camera system, it might have been impossible to disprove the allegations against her. Almost everyone who saw the evidence agreed that she had defended herself in a situation that many people found unthinkable: a pastor attacking a lone staff member behind locked doors. Public opinion shifted faster than Rachel could process. She went from being labeled a criminal to a figure of sympathy or, in some cases, a hero for unveiling the pastor's true behavior. Yet, she found little comfort in that. She had to move her children away from the prying eyes of neighbors and the swirl of local gossip. The church no longer felt like a sanctuary. Legal experts who weighed in on the matter pointed out that the congregation's leadership bore responsibility. If they had acted upon the earlier complaints, Rachel might never have been put in such a dangerous position. Several members of the congregation apologized to her privately. They explained that they had trusted Pastor Walker completely, and they were shocked by the revelations. Despite the apologies, Rachel felt the damage was done. Every time she saw a news story about the incident, it reminded her of the horrifying moment that changed her life. She was caught in a whirlpool of legal proceedings and media attention. Her children were traumatized by the sudden upheaval. Feeling that she had no future in this community, she started making plans to leave. In the aftermath, the community was divided. Some members tried to pick up the pieces, organizing prayer circles and group discussions to process their sense of betrayal. Others turned to social media to vent their outrage at the leadership, or to spread conspiracy theories suggesting that Rachel had staged the incident to extort money. The volunteer tech team that discovered the footage felt both pride and guilt. They had provided the crucial evidence, but they also felt remorse for not stepping forward sooner with any suspicions. Linda, the volunteer who had tried to support Rachel, fought tears as she explained to anyone who would listen that she had once dismissed rumors because she trusted the pastor. Many in the community realized they had been too quick to rally behind a revered figure without questioning his private actions. The ripple effects went beyond the local church. Regional church officials began scrutinizing the leadership to determine how such a cover-up could happen. They found irregularities in financial records linked to settlement payouts. The church faced multiple investigations that threatened its standing in the wider religious community. Some people never doubted Pastor Walker. They visited him in the hospital, offering sympathy and support. They adamantly refused to watch the footage, claiming it might be edited or misleading. The gap between believers and skeptics widened, creating tension that surfaced in public meetings and online forums. Rachel watched from the sidelines, anxious to put this chapter behind her. She met with her attorney to finalize details of her departure, quietly packed her bags, and prepared to leave the area that had once felt like a refuge but had nearly destroyed her life. After she was cleared, Rachel decided she could not remain in a place filled with such painful memories. She found a job opportunity in another region of Texas that would let her handle administrative duties for a community center. Although it was not necessarily the life she had imagined when she first arrived, it offered a fresh start. Her children moved to a new school, away from the classmates who had overheard rumors about their mother. On her final day in the area, she met with Linda and a few supportive church members who had stood by her. They offered her a small sum of money to help with moving costs. Their embrace felt both comforting and bittersweet. Linda whispered that she was sorry she had not done more to prevent what happened. Rachel squeezed her hand and thanked her. In truth, Rachel understood that Linda, like many others, was simply caught in a web of silence and misplaced trust. Driving away with a packed car, Rachel passed the church one last time. She saw the boarded-up windows around the office space, a stark reminder of the night that changed her life. As she merged onto the main road, she could not resist one final glance in the rearview mirror. Even though she was leaving behind heartbreak and a traumatizing ordeal, a pang of regret welled up. She had once believed this place would be her second chance at happiness. Now, it was a memory of betrayal. In her new environment, Rachel sought therapy. She was determined not to let the trauma define her. The nightmares continued, but she discovered that talking about what happened lessened their hold. She hesitated to attend any church events, still fearful of encountering another person like Pastor Walker. Trust, she realized, was fragile. This case is a stark reminder that evil can hide under a veneer of kindness, even in places that symbolize hope and community. It highlights how deeply a community's respect for a leader can blind them to warning signs of misconduct. When the shocking CCTV footage emerged, it flipped the narrative. Rachel was vindicated, but not before she suffered through public humiliation and legal peril. The most haunting question is whether anyone would have believed her had there been no camera. The church had protected Pastor Walker's reputation at the expense of potential victims. 2 prior complaints were settled quietly, leaving a pattern of misconduct unresolved. If someone had spoken openly, or if the board had taken firm action, Rachel's ordeal might never have happened. Instead, she had to face an unimaginable scenario alone, armed only with her quick reflexes and courage. We often hope that truth prevails on its own, but this story underscores the role of evidence in challenging entrenched beliefs. The idea that a single piece of footage could shatter a powerful facade reveals how fragile false narratives can be. It also serves as a warning that silence frequently wins in the absence of proof, and institutions sometimes protect themselves before protecting individuals. Rachel's experience resonates beyond one small community in Texas. It underscores the importance of installing secure reporting channels, fostering transparent leadership, and believing victims when they say something is wrong. Even when an individual is deeply respected, we must be careful not to dismiss serious accusations. True faith, if it exists, should uphold justice, humility, and accountability, rather than preserving an image at any cost. Today, Rachel is trying to move on, raising her boys and rebuilding their lives. She carries scars from that night, both physical and emotional. However, she also carries the hard-earned knowledge that real safety demands constant vigilance and community support. She hopes that her story can serve as an example of how quickly perceptions can shift when hidden truths come to light. Ultimately, the question that lingers most is the same one we posed at the start. What if there was no camera to capture those events in the church office? How easily could an abuser's reputation overshadow the voices of the vulnerable? And how many more individuals are suffering silently, unable to find the proof they need to break free? Thank you for staying with us through this detailed account. If you found this case compelling and want to hear about more true crime stories that challenge our assumptions and delve into hidden truths, remember to subscribe to True Crime Atlas. By supporting our work, you help shine a light on injustices and ensure that stories like Rachel's are told with the care and depth they deserve. Stay safe, remain curious, and never hesitate to question what seems too perfect to be true.